Welcome to another episode of Workforce Wednesday. I have some amazing guests today, including, let me do a quick brief. Brett Landrum with ProCare HR, Suzanne Koenig. Do you want me to use Susie or Suzanne? I always call you Susie, huh?
Yeah, just use Susie, you know.
Okay, great. And Susie is like this famous person or infamous because she's involved in a huge case that we're going to talk about. And Cindy Marino, who's with Susie's organization, and we're going to be talking about workforce, particularly when things go wrong. But before we get started, this. Welcome. Let's just start with actually just some really brief introductions. Brett, we'll start with you.
My name is Brett Landrum. I'm the founder and co-CEO of ProCare HR.
Great. And what do you do? What's ProCare HR?
So ProCare HR, we're an HR services company, provide comprehensive services to senior care organizations, really with the goal and the thesis that if we can do the people and people-related functions better, that'll ultimately translate for our clients to the key business outcomes they're driving towards, which is quality of care, resident satisfaction, financial performance, and growth and scalability.
Great. Why don't you actually introduce Susie? Because she's how I met. You're how I met her, and then Susie, I'll let you introduce Cindy.
Love to. So Suzanne Koenig is the founder and owner of SAK Healthcare. I'll let her talk a little bit about the organization, but they're a client of ours, and Susie is kind of a legend within the industry. So she's been a great advocate and mentor and an advisor for myself and ProCare over the last couple of years.
And also, Brett is a wonderful mentor to me as well. We mentor each other.
Yeah, a powerful mentor for me as well. So Susie, talk to us a little bit about SAK Healthcare and what you do.
Sure. So we're a strategic advisory firm, and we focus on turnaround and restructuring of healthcare and senior living properties. We have nationwide reach. We are all over the country, and we focus on improving healthcare operations. All of our people are very seasoned. That doesn't mean we're old, but we're seasoned. And we have knowledge and expertise in turning around hospitals, long-term care, senior housing, everything. And we get court appointed in many high profile engagements, including hospitals who are in the bankrupt, going through the bankruptcy process, and who we would also be involved in helping to restructure and reporting care as a patient care ombudsman. When we get court appointed by the Department of Justice, we monitor care in the hospitals or the senior housing or the physician or fertility centers. It's kind of everything that's healthcare related. And we report back to the courts on the type of care that's being provided, because what's expected during this process is that, stable care is being provided, not just worried about the finances. But I want to introduce my esteemed colleague, who is also on this presentation, and that's Cindy Marino. And she is a chief nursing officer. That's how I met her, in one of the hospitals that I was court appointed as the patient care ombudsman, a 495-bed teaching hospital in downtown Philadelphia that was very, very high profile. Got the public health was involved, all the agencies, all the politicians, and she closed down the hospital, working through all of the politics, the bankruptcy process, and everything. and she's a healthcare person. And with that, she did such a great job when I got court appointed in this new engagement that we're involved in with 15 hospitals all over the country, 8 of them in Massachusetts. I said, Cindy Marino, I've got to call her and see if she wants to do the other side. And sure enough, we're like surveyors, and we go in and we monitor care. We work with employees. We work with everyone. We work with the commissioner. We work with every single agency. We work with everyone, all the politicians, all the fire chiefs and the police chiefs. We work with everyone. So that's kind of, I guess, a little bit of an introduction, depending on what engagement we get involved in. Plus, we also monitor care, obviously, in the senior living space. We're also very involved in a very high profile senior housing engagement as well, too, with 100 nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And we're monitoring the care and reporting back to the court on that one, too. So we're a little busy right now.
It sounds like it. Cindy, welcome. You'd like to add anything to that?
I don't think there's much to add. We got it all.
Great. So what I'd really like to explore, I know that right now, Susie, your name has been all over the paper with this hospital chain that's going through bankruptcy. And if we step back and look at the senior living industry over the last 12 or 18 months, we've seen a lot of ownership transitions or management company transitions. Some have been in really distressed situation, bankruptcy kinds of things. Other cases, they've been investor groups, often REITs, where they've said, this management of this operating company is just not meeting our needs and we need to make a transition. And so I'm particularly interested in hearing from the three of you about how you take these very different, and of course, when this happens, it creates great uncertainty for the team members, right? Am I going to have a job? Am I going to have a better boss, a worse boss? How do you work through all this with teams so that maybe they actually even come out better than when they went into it? And Susie, we'll start with you.
Well, and this is just so that I understand, it's all different types of teams when there's changes. Is that basically the question, or?
Well, my question, a big part of what makes care work, right, is the team, right? So how do you take care of those people in this transition to keep them motivated, focused, to continue to provide good quality care?
Yeah, I think what's really important, because sometimes we're not always people that come in with good news. Sometimes we have to come in and say, hey, there's either a change in management, or there's a change in ownership, or there may be, a facility closing down. We need your help. We need you to provide the same wonderful care that you're used to providing. And I think we talk to them, and we let, when people understand there's change, sometimes there's a little bit of a grieving process, because change is the hardest thing, because it's the only thing that's stable. Change is the only constant thing. But most people, especially people who've been working at places for 20 and 30 years, I mean, we come across people that have been working, and that's commendable, by the way. Those people are really, good people that can do that. But you listen to what they have to say. I think you have to be a really good listener. And even though from your perspective, if it's not something that's important for what you need to get accomplished, you still need to listen to them and let them, kind of get out their feelings. But you also need to talk about the patients. You need to talk about the residents. You need to talk about the patients and their obligation in healthcare, because they are so important at taking care of these people for all these years, or for whatever they've done. They rely on the employees, and the employee is like a family to them. And it's important that they stay the course. And while staying the course, you can also provide any kind of little incentives, obviously, when things like that happen. But it doesn't have to be financial incentives. It could be bakes, little baking parties every day for employees. Do something special during the crisis period of time, but always make sure there's communication. I find that communication, oh my gosh, that goes a long way, because if people don't know something, it gets misinterpreted. And you always have to talk to people on every shift, however many, there's always 3 shifts and usually 2 shifts sometimes now, with people working 12-hour shifts. Talk to people, have somebody talk to them at the beginning of the shift and the end of the shift, and talk about all the good things that happened on that shift and how they're appreciated. I don't know. Does that kind of give you a little bit about
Yeah, Cindy, you have thoughts on this and how you interact with the team because to me it seems like you have this you're at this pivot point where if you're bringing in bad news, right? Or maybe in some cases maybe it's good news. Maybe they hate working for the organization they're with, right? So Cindy, I'd love to have your thoughts on this.
Sure. I can tell you, when I gave the bad news to the organization where I worked, there were probably about 500 people who crowded into a conference room. So number one, I knew my audience. I came prepared with, this is what is going to happen, and here is the reason why. And I thought of all the frequently asked questions that I thought they would ask. I thought of every question I would ask if the shoe were on my feet. Well, it was on my feet because I also lost my position. So I came really, really well prepared. And I knew that staff would be upset. I was upset. They were crying. I was near tears. And I knew I would be. I begged not to have to give that news. But in retrospect, I probably was the best person to give that bad news, because I am the person in the organization who was the most stable, meaning I had been there the longest, not otherwise. But anyway, so I was the most stable person there, and they trusted me. I made it concise, sort of to the point, but not blunt. I tried to show empathy, and I think I did a good job with that. And I allowed them to vent their feelings. And I just listened. There was no real words to give them to make it better. It was going to happen. And I assured them that we would have job fairs, because that's what people worry about. Now what? So we did job fairs. We had resume writing, because like Susie said, many people have been there for 20, 30 or so years. They haven't ever had to write a resume, because back in the day, you really just filled out a job application. You really didn't necessarily have a big resume. So resume writing was a big thing, and constant rounding on all the employees. And I can tell you that I was there night and day rounding just to hear what people had to say. And I guess as soon as you know the bad news, you probably should share the bad news and not procrastinate, because you want to get the news out there before anybody else gets the news out there, because somehow things get publicized before you're necessarily ready to share. So as soon as you know, I believe that you should probably share that information.
To me, that's so important, right? And of course, when these transition happens, the rumor mill just goes round and round. So Brett, on your side, I know you've worked a lot with Susie and come into organizations to help make this transition. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys do as an organization just to make it better? Because the uncertainty is terrible, right?
Yeah, what Susie and Cindy talked about is really, critical, and we can support some of the messaging, but that comes, I think it's most impactful coming from, the person taking over the group, organization leader taking over operations. And if you think, like, generally people are in healthcare because they want to care for people, and they want to do the right thing. And when you're in these situations, you've just taken them from, an environment of wherever they were on the scale of like kind of psychological safety, and you've just kind of blown it up. And so, like what Susie and Cindy were talking about around transparency and communication and empathy, I think helps, tremendously in kind of recreating that environment. But you're really, part of the work that we've done in partnership with Susie in the past has been about, like, it seems really tactical and basic, but like, you got to get pay right, you got to get benefits right. Like we're already in this period of turmoil where we're not sure what's going to happen. We have, lots of nerves. All of a sudden payroll goes wrong, and it's like not now, there's another cut that makes me concerned as an employee about what's going to happen. Am I going to be able to, pay my bills, buy food, etc.? And so, a lot of times it's about coming in and just executing the basics really well. It can even be just 30 days, but if you can execute the basics really well for 30 days, and really engage the communities that you're working with, to let them know, like, hey, like, this can be an improvement. We're going to provide a lot of support. We're building relationships, like that goes a long way. And so, when we're coming into, there are times where I'll get the call from Susie, and it'll be like one time I got one on a Thursday night, and we had like Tuesday night, we had like 3 days to bring on 3 communities. And like, you're running fast, but the main thing there is you've got to be in with the community leaders and the employees, and just like throw everything you've got at them for a period of time where they have confidence that, like, we care, we're here to help, we're here to support. Like, there's not going to be a bunch of disruption beyond the management or operator change. So I think that, like, just doing the basics really well with a high level of communication and transparency is critical.
Yeah. So Susie, I sort of see this as Brett's talking. I sort of see this big smile as you're thinking about that particular situation. And one of the things that occurs to me is that in some cases, what you're actually doing is taking people from a great amount of uncertainty. I don't know whether you ever run into cases where people actually in the old regime end up missing paychecks, and you actually make it better. And so I guess the thing I'm wondering is, can you take this and actually leverage this to make team members more loyal, happier, more glad to work there? That didn't come out quite right. Anyway, Susie?
Yeah. So, well, Brett's team absolutely can come in literally minutes. I mean, he has saved me. I've taken over communities. I said, Brett, I need a payroll like literally in 3 days. And he's like, Susie, I can't do that. I said, yes, you can. And believe it or not, he figures it out. I don't know how he does it, but he does. And, sometimes there's mistakes, and it's not his fault. We just implemented something that nobody can do. And so we have to sit down with people and say, hey, this is the story. We've had a big change here. We're going to get it right. If we don't get it right the first time, we're going to get it right the next time, but we're going to make sure everybody gets paid. And, payroll is usually the hardest. And when I come in, usually as a receiver into some places, I will tell you, the employees are just thankful because they have been going through such aggravation. They've already had bills that don't get paid. Paychecks have bounced already probably numerous times. And there's already issues that they know in the community. And we come in and we talk to them and we say, we try to build the team. It's just like any kind of baseball team or football team that's going to go back out, and try to win the game. We get a huddle. We get together the leaders of the facilities and the department heads, and we talk to them and we say, hey, we need your help. We need you to work with us. And we're not going to say it's going to like be the best thing tomorrow or the next day, but within 10 days, you're going to be happy. You're going to feel better. And you can come and talk to us. And these are our plans, what we want to do, but we need your input. Employees want to give their input. They want to be part of the plan. If you don't include them in the plan or in the planning of it, they're not going to accept it. Make it sound like it's their plan. I'm good at that. When I come in and take over buildings, my team always wants me to be the person that goes in and talks because I make that plan their plan. It's no longer my plan, but it's what I wanted them to do. I get them to do what I wanted them to do because I kind of make it their plan. Well, what's your thought on this? And how could we do this? Like I'll tell them the end game where I want to get there, but you tell me how you think we should get there. And sometimes it's not the plan that I want, but it's going to be the plan that I need for the next week to get everybody on board. Then I also get residents and patients on board. If I'm in a skilled nursing facilities, if I'm in assisted living, retirement, I go in and I meet with the residents. I meet with, in the hospitals, we go in and we meet with the patients. We talk about their care, what type of care they're getting there. So there is really, really a lot of opportunity. But again, you have to work with your teams. If your team, it feels that they're not an added team member, it's not going to work. And it won't trickle down. It's going to trickle down from the top all the way down. And you talk to everybody. You don't not talk to the people that work in the kitchen. You don't not talk to the CNAs. You don't not talk to the people that empty the garbage. You talk to everybody.
Yeah. I think that this level of communication is so critical. And so you get the first payroll right, you get the second payroll right. Always probably going to have a few challenges. Fix that. Then, Cindy, how do you go about sort of just building and building and building the team?
Well, I believe in what's called shared governance, and it's a lot of what Susie was just saying with just a formal word to it. It's involving your employees in decision making, and I don't believe that every decision is a shared decisions, but there's a lot of decisions that are shared decisions that the staff should have a say in how they want to do something. And I think when you just constantly engage your staff, you lead by example. You don't ask them to do something that they know you wouldn't do yourself. If you're in a facility, if a call light goes on, you can answer that call light. You become part of the team. And when your team members trust you, they're going to work really, really hard for you. So.
Yeah. So I'd like to maybe play a little bit more on this theme of trust. How do again, we sort of talked about how you get through this crisis. So once you've got, again, Susie, you get through these first couple things and now you've got this long slog, right? And even sometimes I assume you kind of know who's going to step in. Sometimes there's maybe some uncertainty. How do you keep building on that and building on that and building on that?
Well, I think that you know where you have to get to. You know what your plan is, and you have a plan when you go in. You know how much time you have to get things accomplished. And I think it's kind of just working on keeping everybody motivated. You got to keep the teams motivated. You have to communication. Again, Cindy and I work with very poor communicators, and it's very difficult because if they tell somebody something, somebody else something, and then me something else, that's not good because that the communications don't get to the right people, and then we can't present the communication the way it's going to be. And I think that even if it's bad news, I firmly believe this, you have to talk about it, and you have to talk about it with your teams. and you can say things. You can give the worst news, and you can do it with a smile, and with a way that it's going to be okay. And then people will believe in you. It's just the way you present it. You can't give people bad news and be, oh, this is terrible, or this is just the way it is. We're closing down, and just go into the detail. You got to say, I have something to tell all of you. You've worked really hard. This place has been a landmark, and you made it that way. You made the community that way. And let's make, these, if you tell them you're closing, let's make these final days. Let's be proud. Let's let everybody talk about what a great job we did in doing that. I mean, it's a totally different mindset than going in and telling people you're closing, and even when you take over places too, it's the same thing. You want to be able to implement change in a very positive way. And it's all in the presentation and the maturity level that you present it.
So, Brett, it occurs to me that, I really like this idea that Susie talks about of if you've got bad news, that you get it out there early and fast and straightforward. And it occurs to me that mostly when it's bad news, the team members already know things are a mess, right? And so it's probably not as big a surprise as the people delivering it think it is. What do you think?
I think I've experienced this. I think you see it a lot more with young leaders where, I'll use the example of like terminating somebody who's not in the right seat, not the right person in the organization, particularly if they're a leader. And the number of times in our organization where we have, decided to move on, and, you just dread it. You dread the conversation. You love the person, but it's just not quite the right fit. And you have all these, and you need to have the contingency plans. And how is this going to go? If it doesn't go right, what happens with the team? How do we communicate? How do we be transparent, et cetera? And oftentimes, I think particularly young leaders tend to delay those conversations and those decisions too long. They drag them out because they're nervous either about having the conversation and kind of the emotional turmoil that that you have to go through to be human and have a really tough conversation, and or they're worried about what's going to happen. And more often than not, the team members know it. Like as soon as I just think back and years ago when we would turn somebody and I'd be stressed and I'd delay and what's going to happen with the team. And then you do it and the team's like thankful because that while they may have really cared for the person, they want a really strong leader in there. And so I think that, people are perceptive, they're around, they see it, they generally know what's working and what's not. And, you need to be smart and have a good plan, but I'm a big proponent of taking action.
Yeah. And I think, as a leader who has to sometimes terminate people, you have to also be prepared that sometimes it doesn't go as well as it should. People get surprised and they get angry and they're mad, and you sort of get it, particularly if they've been really invested in. It's probably the hardest part, I'm thinking, is somebody has really deeply invested in their job, but they're still not very good at it. And that's really a tough challenge. And what do you do in those circumstances, Susie?
Well, as a matter of fact, I got a call this morning by one of my people and said, we just have to terminate this person. And I said, she's beloved. She's beloved in the community. She's beloved with the family. She's beloved with everyone. And they said, you talk to her and she just can't, get the things together. She already is off on another tangent and she's not accomplishing the goals that we need. And the goals that we need to move forward. We as a team have goals that we have to get to. And I said, okay, again, just like Brett said, you got to make sure that you have everything documented, and you have to be able to work with them and see, and maybe there's some other way that you can get them to perform. I always say, well, let me try it, or let somebody else try it. But if it's just impossible, and as Brett said, you just have to be honest up front, give the all the real the truth about it, and just say, hey, maybe this is just not a fit for you here, but I'm happy to give you a reference. I'm happy to do whatever I can everywhere else. But it's a hard thing. That's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, well, so much of this stuff would be a lot easier if it weren't for the people, right? I mean, I think that is the biggest challenge. So, sort of we're about out of time here, but sort of any last words, and I'm going to actually broaden this a little bit, and we'll start with, I'm going to pick on you first, Cindy. Just want to warn you before I ask the question. As you just think about, the three of you have this really unique vantage point, right? Because you get to see a lot of organizations that manage their teams in very different ways. What are like the 2 or 3 biggest things that people need to be careful of, biggest mistakes, and maybe biggest opportunities? And so, Cindy, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think personally, a mistake probably that I made was being too close to your team members. And I think that it made it difficult because there were some people who thought I had favorites. So I think you have to be very careful that you can be friendly, but not friends with your team, because there is, unfortunately, at times jealousy among team members. I think you need to reward and recognize good behavior or meeting goals. And I believe that just because somebody does their job doesn't mean that they shouldn't be recognized for it. I know that there are leaders out there who will say, well, they're just doing their job. Why should I reward and recognize them? But that helps motivate people. So I think those are some thoughts that I have on.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that you can't say thank you. You can't say good job enough. And you're right. I talk to people who say, well, it's their pay, they get a paycheck and that's good enough, but it's not really good enough. Susie?
Yeah. So I think, what's important is you got to listen to your team. A lot of times I've become the person, I don't walk in and say, this is how we're doing it. That's it. I always listen to my team members. I get everyone's point of view. I'm not that kind of person that comes in, even though I'm in charge of the company, I will never be the one that makes the initial decision and the final decision without making sure that I've talked to all of my trusted advisor colleagues that are in there with me. And that motivates them because they know that they have a voice. And also, I don't know everything. I try to surround myself with the smartest people in the room because I know that makes me a better leader. And if I surround myself, with like people like Cindy and Brett's company, I know that if I'm surrounded by them, I will look good in any situation that I'm put in.
Yeah, absolutely true. And Brett, what do you see that's working and what do you see that's not working as you work with these companies?
So I think about it really 3 things, and it's more a little bit of execution, but very philosophical. One of them is, it's really mindset, clarity, and communication. And so like from a mindset perspective, and I imagine not everybody holds the same belief, but I feel strongly that a business needs to be ran like a professional sports team, not a family. Like to Susie's point, we have goals. We have, most organizations have ambitious goals, and we're a professional sports team. We have each other's back. We look out for, for one another, but hey, going after the big prize, that's what we're trying to achieve. And and so that, like, that mindset is really important, I think, as you're evaluating, who do we need in different roles, who's working, who's not, et cetera. Whereas I think a lot of organizations and again, leaders often will get themselves into trouble because it's like, we're one big happy family, and it's like, we're really not. We're a sports team. We're here to do a job, and we need to make sure we have the right folks on the team and communicate well and have cohesion amongst the group. And then the two big things, and I know we're at ProCare, we're still guilty of this all the time. It's clarity for whoever is in the role. Like, hey, this is what's expected. These are the timeframes within which it's expected. These are the norms and the values, and how we achieve success as a group. And then the communication around, as Cindy and Susie have talked about, communication on, hey, what's going really well, and let's highlight and talk about that, and what are the areas that maybe we need to do a little bit better because we're missing the mark. And again, I'm certainly have been guilty in this in the past, but I mean, communication needs to be early and often, both positive and the constructive feedback.
Yeah, and I really like in fact, I made a note here because I'm going to turn it into an article. The idea that what we're really doing is like a sports team. And what really strikes me about that is that at some point in time, you can have somebody who's a star, and at some point in time, they don't quit performing. In the sports team, often it's because their age and they just can't continue doing it. And no matter how much you love that star, if they're not moving you towards the goal, you've got to call it quits, right? And I think that's a really important concept, that you can really like somebody, love somebody, and you've still got to be working for the goal. So with that, thank you very much. We're way past time. Great conversation. Hang on for just a minute after we're off the air, and thank you for joining me.